This is Lysha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I am so excited to welcome to our podcast community today somebody that I've had the absolute pleasure to get to know through a community that I'm a co-founder of, the Women in Recruitment Leadership. And I'm guessing that if you have got any kind of interest in this topic, which is why you've clicked play, you might be familiar with this lady as well. This is Kristie Perrotte, who is the founder of Thrive Recruitment Marketing and is joining us with the most beautiful backdrop on a very special day. Nay, it's her wedding anniversary. So welcome
Hey.
to you today and happy anniversary.
When I was thinking, what shall I do on this day? There was nowhere else I wanted to be.
I
Don't
mean,
tell
I hope your spouse feels the same.
he's at work. It's all right.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us. Like I say, I feel like I've got to know you extremely well, but there'll be plenty of people clicking on that don't know who you are or what you do. So give us a potted history, Kristie, about yourself.
Potted history. Well, I hit 20 years in the industry last year. That's a
Congrats.
scary thought. Um, Mainly on the marketing side in recruitment. So
Okay.
there was a little summer way back when everybody either went on maternity leave or retired, and they said we need you to support a desk. So I had to sit with had the advantage of sitting with like a proper, top performer, global biller, former CFO turned recruiter. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot of empathy and really understanding, my customer, my internal customer. But I've always been on the marketing side. So the accent's Canadian, started my career over there, moved to the UK 15 years ago, kept growing my career. I was really lucky. I was with a very large, very prominent
Yep.
recruitment household name, and I grew with that business. I
Good.
sat on the international steering committee. I had oversight of quite a lot of markets and territories and revenue. And ultimately, I learned how marketing really needs to be
Mm.
accountable to the business, to the sales teams, to the operational goals, to innovation and growth, and this crazy world of automation and digital and tech. Well, it was there 10 years ago, and it's still up on the upward crescendo. And so I decided that we needed to bring this to SME businesses
Yep.
in the recruitment space. And I founded a marketing agency 7 years ago. And that's just it. It's marketing that drives ROI. It's not fuzzy, pretty pictures.
Awesome.
It's how do we actually get and yield return from the investments we're making in marketing.
Absolutely brilliant. What an amazing synopsis. Very succinct. I'm super impressed. And I think, just to kind of underpin how I feel about marketing, I think it's got this really sort of split personality reputation in our industry
Mhm.
that it is seen as, and I know we're going to come on to this, and possibly it's a very nice segue into, that marketing equals personal brand. And for me, marketing is not, it's about ROI. It's about actual, how does it generate profit and revenue for a business? And I love your strapline, by the way, reinventing boundaries. So you reinvent boundaries that maybe were already there or maybe weren't there. You maybe
Oh,
set them.
that's just it. Maybe we set them, but it's the fact that yes, we are in a technology age of technology world.
Yep.
I think it's very easy, and we're in a very technical marketing world. It's actually really, really technical today.
Mm.
I liken it to, you're never going to find that unicorn marketer who I liken it to like an HR professional or a CFO. You have two different people doing those two roles: the CFO in the data, the technical, and you add
Mm.
CIO to that equation in the technical, in that scientific brain, and then you have the HR side, or the that the brand, the copy, the messaging, the art. It's where that art meets science,
Love that.
and you need to have both ultimately
Mm.
today.
Mm.
And in today's economy, in today's world, and in today's plethora of data, you need to
Mm.
actually show that it's moving the dial, and that's what we aim to do.
Yeah, and I think, setting the scene, I think when we were talking off camera, and we're not being disingenuous, we're just being possibly purposefully a little bit antagonistic, that
Mm.
I think that a lot of recruiters who are doing the day-to-day job think they are marketeers. They think they're marketeers because they will go onto Instagram, they'll do a reel on TikTok, they'll share something on their LinkedIn thinking this is my personal brand. And you and I actually, you thought you were being contrarian, but I'm like, no, I agree with you. Let's just set the stall as how you define what marketing actually is to a recruiter. Let's be really specific to a recruiter listening.
Yeah, so I will not go into this, but I could show a lovely graph or picture that says that there's 26 different marketing channels and strategies in
Okay.
marketing. So personal branding is one of them. Company branding is another within
Yeah.
that. And I'm all for personal branding. I think that there's something to be said, especially when somebody is in a sales role, that ability to reach people at
Yep.
scale, that ability to get your message across, that ability to profile yourself on what actually makes you different.
Yep.
And I'm not necessarily saying, oh, here's me walking the dog. I'm saying, actually getting into what professional version of yourself you want to be putting forward. And that, yes, there's some personal elements in there, but there's also some really, I think, quite strategic messaging on how you want to be perceived. But I think and I've been quite vocal about this over the years, where I differ from that, or where I maybe draw the line on it, is if you are a founder, if you are a business leader of a business that is scaling or has ambitions to scale, it can't be your only strategy.
No.
And the reason with that is, if you are the founder, you need to, if you have a goal to, whether you're in scale up mode and you don't want to be doing the desk jobs all day long because you have another job as running the business, it can't be all about you. If you're on the next stage of growth that you're wanting to get towards some kind of valuation in the sale, it certainly can't be all about you, or else you'll never be able to leave that business. And then likewise with your consultants, it's yes, very here and now. You want them to be out there. You want them to be, think of it as a tool in your toolbox. It's their hammer, that they can be going out and using it as for the company and for themselves. But as much as you say you have loyalty amongst your team, they can leave any day. And if you don't have that core brand and that core marketing function that's actually facilitating, the brand message, the inbound, all these different things that's going to grow your business, you're going to miss out. So use your hammer, but don't forget the rest of the tools in your toolbox if you're going to be building that house.
I think your analogy is very much around tools, a toolkit. I like to use food. And to me, personal brand is the eggs in a cake. And, we can make scrambled eggs and you can eat scrambled eggs and that's all you really need. Maybe a bit of salt and pepper, but, you could just eat scrambled eggs. Fantastic. But I think if you genuinely want to create this beautiful cake, you need to add the other components. But it's having that recipe from the start, which is where I see a marketing strategy. Oh, anything to do with food, Kristie. I mean, I'm that. And I think personal brand.
You need a recipe. The recipe is your strategy. It's you can make a stir fry throwing some things in to actually make that beautiful cake. It takes science. It takes the beautiful elements. That kind of science meets art. That's such a great analogy because it will literally flop if you don't have the strategy, aka the recipe for it.
Because if you miss out on the baking powder, it's going to fall. If you miss out, have you ever done this? You've ever made a cake without flour and you realise and then it comes out, it's like a biscuit. It's still edible. It's actually a brilliant analogy because this is directly related to
this right here.
I mean, to me, the personal brand to me is I want my personal brand to be, what do people say about me when I'm not in the room, right? And that's all it's doing. That is all your personal brand is doing. And I think there's been so much noise, and I've probably been part of that noise for the last 5 years. Certainly since COVID, it's like been the hot topic. But I think it's just one element of how a business, regardless of size to scale, because scale can be through profit and market rather than just people. And it's about, if you don't then align to a company's values and purpose, you are just a silo saying your own thing, and it doesn't kind of relate back to it. So I think that's where I actually don't think it's that contrary thing. I think there'll be a lot of people out there, but equally, on the flip side of this, there are lots of people in leadership roles who refuse to share anything on their own personal brand, and they just continue to share,
and that's probably not the right thing either. There's striking a balance.
Balance is a balance. So
I think if you look at just on that point, it doesn't take much to actually look at some of the leaders in the space. You'll know some of the names. I'm not going to repeat them right now. They are not doing their own social media. They could, but they probably are not. But they're still very, very present. I call that executive profiling. It's very specific. It's very deliberate in what they're putting out there. They understand. I go through, we have a personal brand workshop actually, and it goes through creating your own message house. That message house, if you're the CEO, or that message house when you're that at-desk recruiter, have your pillars, Have
Yes.
your, this going back to my house analogy, isn't it? But have your foundations, and you can differ from that. You can sway off of it, but you can always come back to what you want to be known for. And that's the deliberate, executives can be very, very deliberate and be very, very successful on how they then align that as part of the wider company versus maybe that kind of influencer goal from it, which I think a lot of people confuse with it.
Which I agree with you totally, and maybe there will be people turning off, going, "Oh well, you've just insulted me." But actually, I think you can, that the whole era on LinkedIn of creating viral posts, well, the algorithm doesn't allow you to really focus on that anymore. It's almost, that was a sort of COVID thing to get, hundreds of thousands of views on a post, and that was like the aim. I think, for me, it's having some intention and purpose. I like what you've suggested there. I mean, clearly that's why you're the expert in what you do, that you can have this, I guess, fabrication, this structure as a business, that these are our intentions across these pillars, but we're allowing you to be creative. We want your personality. We want you to create this niche. If you've got, fee earners in different spaces, you'll use different voices, you'll use different data that you might be sharing, but you're all aligned to the same messages of how you're positioning your company brand within that marketing strategy. And I think for me, you are a perfect guest to talk about this, because you have this bird's eye view of what is working when it comes to, and let's set the scene right now. We said this off camera. 2025 has been, I think for me, I've been in recruitment over a quarter of a century. It's been one of the most challenging markets I've ever seen. It fluctuates from month to month. It's really hard to plan. It's really hard for business owners to invest in things like recruitment fees for me, marketing for you, tech, HR, training, development. So actually, I think talking about the ROI on marketing is possibly one of the most important conversations we can have. So and you don't need to name names, you probably can't, but what are the best ROI companies doing now in terms of their marketing strategy? Like what tips can you give us?
Yeah, well, I think just to kind of dovetail off what you just said, I think that the goalposts have changed a little bit, and people are starting to recognize that. I think previously, we did have a heyday of recruitment for over a decade, didn't we? That really people, and it's an industry that's naturally competitive, right? It's bred to be competitive. So people were using, you couldn't actually see each other's numbers, so they're using headcount as the barometer on, something to beat their chest up. Oh, look, I'm and I was speaking actually to a CEO of a very well-known household name recruiter very recently, and he said, we're smaller than we've ever been. He says, and that can, there's a message around that. And they're not small by any, in real terms, but he says, internally it can feel tough, because the consultants have that mindset as well. Oh, lots of staff, we're growing, not lots of staff, we're not. He says, but I've never felt so good about the business as I do right now, because they've gotten everything. They realize that headcount is the ultimate vanity, because headcount comes with more licenses, more desks, more salaries. If you're not actually profitable within that, and that includes marketing. If marketing is not an active contributor to all of those other elements that make a successful fit for purpose business, you can't have a business like that. It's false. So his point was, we've invested in the technology. We're feeling good about it. We've invested in the marketing. They're seeing amazing results from it, doing it properly. They're investing in all that infrastructure. And he says, yes, it is still our intention to grow in the future, but we know that we're going to be supercharged when we do.
Absolutely.
Because we laid the groundwork for it.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, this is a total aside, but I've always thought that it's the biggest irony of me as a rec to rec, that I have always wondered why we have such a fixation on headcount, when for me it should be about productivity per head as opposed to how many of those heads we have. So I think that's really interesting. And in terms of, the example that you've given, I think that's all well and good, but then it's really important to understand how that marketing strategy is measured. And I think that's really, because people are great, again, recruitment leaders and recruiters generally, and this is a massive, huge assumption, is that we love to buy things. We love to say, oh, I'm doing this, I'm investing in this, I'm doing this. And it's like, oh, isn't it brilliant? But actually, if you're not then measuring the marketing strategy and ensuring the data is there to prove the ROI, it's pointless.
Correct. So how do we get around that? So the first thing is actually you need to understand, what are you setting out to do?
Okay.
So the question I typically, when I'm meeting a new business, is I say, if you have a pie, sorry for anybody who's heard me say this before, if you have a pie and you're carving up your pie to candidate acquisition, client acquisition, and internal headcount,
Yeah.
consultant acquisition, 3Cs, how would you divvy up that pie? And you can't say thirds, because thirds means we're in a supply and demand industry. If
Absolutely.
you say thirds, you're hamster, you're on the hamster wheel. So there always has to be something that's leading. It's always supply demand. Doesn't mean it has to be like that forever. Right now, most of the businesses we're speaking with are saying it's all about client generation. We need the client generation. So it means that from a marketing standpoint, I can set my strategy to say, okay, we need more client job order creation. I can then set my KPIs to what is our ultimate goal here, and everything follows from that. Now, some people will say, well, I'm in healthcare, I'm in nursing, I'm in teaching. Yeah, those industries are probably most of the time are going to be 80% candidate driven. So your strategies follow suit. There isn't a one size fits all, despite us all working in recruitment. And I think then the other piece in the ROI is do we have the means to measure it, and to what extent? So we're not Amazon at the end of the day. We can't quite get to that granularity of, okay, we had this marketing campaign and it resulted in this click to this basket to somebody put in their credit card. Ding. We're getting so much better. The technology is getting to the point that we can start actually measuring that client or
funnel
acquisition
through
to sale, but there are still gaps in there. And there's a very big gap there is a human element. There's a recruitment consultant that is involved. So we're not quite there yet, or we're working towards our way there. But you absolutely can start measuring how many CVs your website is getting. What channels are they coming from? Are they coming from Google and organic search? Are they coming from AEO, the biggest elephant in the room, answer engine optimization? So this is your AI. Is it coming from AI? That's a massive one. Is it coming from social media? Is it coming from email? Is it coming from consultants, own activities, etc.? So we should be able to see candidate CVs or registrations, clients submit a vacancy, request a call back, download a salary guide, some kind of client conversion. And we should be able to see what channel it's coming from. So, and that's, if we can pull it all the way through to placement, holy grail. But at bare minimum, pretty much every business should be able to measure those two things. And then the other one is, and I'm such a massive advocate for any business with any kind of tenure, why are we going net new to LinkedIn, to job boards? Prices are going up again. Everybody's talking about this. Chances are that candidate or client already exists in your database.
Absolutely.
So why are we always looking for shiny new when they're not very shiny or new? They exist in your database. We've just not done the right things to keep them warm and or reactivate them, keep the data good, and to be able to use that as your first protocol.
Absolutely. God, that last point, 100%. It flabbergasts me how people just make things so difficult, particularly in perm heavy markets. Why are you not going back and speaking to people that you spoke to 6 months ago, a year ago, keeping in touch with
that
people?
Data.
You own it.
If I was that recruitment leader, and if I was thinking about how much I'm paying for all these different licenses and job boards, if I'm thinking about the actual time of my consultants on an hourly wage or daily rate to go out and search all these things, and I haven't yet invested in marketing or the data to make that CRM the place that they can go to do the same job but faster, cheaper, because it's not, you still obviously have expenses, but you don't have advertising expenses or necessarily as much resource expenses. It's eye-watering if you think about how much money goes over 5, 10, 20 years that has just gone down the drain.
Well, your acquisition of an existing contact, whether it's a client or a candidate, is going to be cheaper,
always,
logically, than acquiring a new one.
No matter what.
So I just think that should, for me, be a really important pillar in your marketing strategy. It's to continuously utilize the people that you have. We make it an absolute stalwart part of the key recruitment process that we have people that we've had on our database from day one, which we're 20 years old this year. And there are people on there that we might never place, but they will always give us referrals.
Mm.
And, it's that's where the human element for me won't be replaced by the automation element of it. It's knowing those are the people that you want to ask. They're not just going to get an e-shot off you, they're going to get a phone call saying, gosh, it's ages since I've spoken to you. How's things been? You've always been brilliant. We've paid you X amount in referral fees over the years. How do you fancy earning some more money? We could do with people in these areas. And the people will always help you. I just think it's like a really obvious part of your marketing and
Yeah.
easy to monitor.
And I think this is also the place where, that AI taking people's jobs, and there was a headline this week of some bank is cutting so many jobs. If you read, if you look at the counterbalance to that, and I can't believe I'm quoting Stephen Bartlett on this,
I know.
people either love him or hate him, but this was a really intuitive point he had. He said, I'm actually looking at every person's job and how I can actively automate or systematize 60% of the job. He says it's not to eliminate that job, but he says, but it's getting staff who are creative, who have
Yeah.
great negotiation or people or
Yep.
skills. It's those, there will be jobs lost, but at the same time, it's how do we redeploy people to think strategically,
Yeah.
to think, creatively, to have these conversations, to do exactly what you just said. Now, I think there is a place for automation in what you just said as well. So you have your relationships and you keep your consultants building those relationships.
Yep.
Automation, if you have a 50,000 person database, you probably do over 20 years,
Mm.
you'll never be able to get through all 50,000. So how
Of
do you
course
use
not.
the automation
Of course.
and not spammy?
No.
There's marketing was bad marketing before it was automated. There's nothing new. It's just the fact that more people get it than they ever used to. So how do you create meaningful segmentation, segmenting the data? How do you create meaningful messages and pain points, understanding that, you're not going to treat that customer you explained who has this amazing relationship with you, you segment them out from the ones that you may not have spoken to in 2 years.
Yes.
You still want to be engaging them. And this is where, kind of smart marketing and smart segmentation and smart data comes into play, that let the tools facilitate that so you can spend your time having those amazing relationships that will still pay dividends.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'll forgive you for mentioning Stephen Bartlett because as much as I don't sit on the fence with him either. He does come out with some very intuitive, very insightful things,
Absolutely
and
does.
I think it just depends on how I'm feeling about his guest or the topic. But I agree with you, and I think that I'm no longer afraid about AI. I think that we are, we're a couple of years into the AI journey as an industry. And yes, there have been job losses directly due to companies investing in that, but I think there's far more opportunity for jobs created. And
I
to
agree.
me, it's a really cheesy thing to say, but where I see automation playing in my role, because I'm possibly I don't know where I am in terms of adoption of it. It allows me to do the magic. I want to go and do the magic. I want to do the face-to-face client meetings. I want to get on the phone and get on Teams and get on Zooms and speak to people, catch up with them. I want to have more time to do podcasts and to do more live webinars and that kind of thing. For me, that kind of freeing up my time so I don't have to spend hours and hours writing up, presentations or whatever it might be, or doing, reports for my clients takes me 2 seconds. So I think
Exactly.
that's where, that's my personal view on things. I certainly don't appreciate receiving any sequence emails, any kind of e-shot. I stopped opening anything like that years ago. And I imagine most people are the same as in-mails on LinkedIn. Bore off.
And you know what, maybe that's actually coming back to that original point. You have to, have different tools in your toolbox, and you have to use them with very specific intent at different times and to achieve different things.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's a beautiful way to finish on the final point, which is, really playing to the pun of your business name, which is how do our listeners thrive going forward? What would your advice be? If you could give us like a couple of really that anybody can do wherever they're at in their journey.
Yeah, I think it's being brave with marketing. And this is going
Okay.
to sound very self-serving, but I mean being brave, because I think recruiters naturally will say, okay, I want to grow, I'm going to add a head. And so think of all the costs of adding that head. What you can actually achieve if you put that money into, maybe instead of getting an entry level marketer, get a level marketer.
Yeah.
If you do have that mid-level marketer, maybe then look at getting a strategic fractional or strategic marketing agency. I know self-serving to support that. But when it comes back to that data point is when you can actually start seeing, and this is actually a call to all marketers as well, as soon as you can actually really start showing that ROI, and that takes bravery on the side of the marketer as well. You may have to push back and say, I'm not going to do that jazzing up sales slick, or I'm going to create a bunch of templates because you taking on all my time means I cannot do the strategic stuff. But once that leader and that marketer can get together on this and actually align and say, yes, we're going to do this. We believe in marketing. We believe that it's going to actually yield something back and produce something. You're now in a position of power that you can say, you know what, I could put that head count in, but I actually know my marketing is going to deliver this. And I'm going to invest in that.
I love that.
Self-serving perhaps, but yeah, be brave, be bold, and be ready to push boundaries.
Oh my God, all the alliteration. I can't cope, Kristie. It's just brilliant. I know what this podcast is going to be called. I know she is.
Who
I know, but it's still good. It's still good. Thank you so much. That has been, honestly, if you're listening to this now and you are going to take action points from this and you then utilize that in your marketing strategy, you need to tag Kristie and Thrive Recruitment Marketing and make sure you tag the show, the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. We want to know how it's elevating you, where it's taking you on your marketing journey and going forward. And make sure if you get in touch with Kristie, you mention the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you at the next event, hopefully in Manchester, all being well. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.